Well, good morning, folks. It is Wednesday, and it's August 19th, and today we start something new. It's a brand new day. Every day is a new day, but today we start something new. We finished Galatians yesterday, and we got done with what is my favorite letter of Paul's. And I think it's really a very revelatory, and hopefully you gain some insight from it, and maybe some blessing. So that's my prayer for what we did with Galatians. But now we're going to move on. As we've been going through this study, I had kind of been thinking, since there's so many, we made so many inferences and connections with Acts as we go through Galatians. That's a large part of, to me anyway, the gaining some guidance from Galatians is to go back and look at Acts. I had thought that we'd jump back into Acts and go to Acts after finishing Galatians, and then just kind of lay the two side by side. But I decided, and not that long ago, basically yesterday morning, that I wanted, instead of jumping right into Acts, I want to look at Luke first, because Luke and Acts are really a two-part. It's a part one, part two. Very, very few. I only know of one scholar that argues that they have different authors. It's pretty much unanimous that they are written by the same author. In fact, I shouldn't say most, many think that it was actually at one time one volume, and probably based on the size of the two, roughly the two would have fit each onto a normal sized or average sized scroll, one that you can deal with. In order to put the two together on one scroll, it becomes kind of cumbersome and unwieldy. So the thought is that they probably broke, the end of Jesus and after Jesus, the ascension, post-ascension. That was where where Luke broke the story, and probably at least some copies of it were existing on separate scrolls, and at some point in time, one of them got separated. And that's why some people think that there was a separate, introduction in Acts, that was added, that wasn't actually written by the author of Luke, the original author. We'll look at that when we get to Acts, so we'll talk about that at some point in time in the future, rather, some distant place on the internet, when we get there, in reality, when we get there and we start talking about Acts. But now we're going to deal with Luke. So really, it's volume one, volume two. We did my favorite Pauline letter. Now we're going to do my favorite gospel. I love Luke. And I have my own reasons for loving Luke, because I think of Luke as a peacemaker, and predominantly that comes out of Acts. But there are some stories also in Luke that are unique to Luke, and I won't talk about those because we'll talk about them as we get to them. There are some of the parables in Luke that that aren't in others, that I find as being extremely important for understanding God and Christ. The other thing that we deal with when we're dealing with Luke, it's written to an individual. It's written to Theophilus, and Theophilus, of course, means friend of God. So it's debated as to whether there was an actual Theophilus and who he was and what he was. Some think he was somebody in leadership, that he might have had a place in the household of the emperor. I've read other people thought that he was high priest or something, and I don't think I believe that one. Personally, but it means friend of God, the name. So some think that it wasn't really written to anybody, that it's written to everyone that's a friend of God. I like that better myself, but it's very possible. We don't know. Whoever wrote Luke did not tell us. The name to the gospel is Luke, was assigned very early on. It does not say in the body of the work that, hey, I'm Luke, the good physician. It doesn't say that. If we look at in Acts, we look at the vantage point of, some of it is in first person, written in first person, as if he was there on the trip. We'll talk about that when we get to Acts, but which is a long ways off, probably. Could even be next year. Who knows? Could take a long time. But if it is Luke, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be, actually. It would make more sense that it was actually truly written by Luke than written by someone else, because most of your letters, with the exception of Hebrews, they're assigned to someone that was a person in leadership. Okay, somebody that had generally a first generation, or some like Mark, who has a great, talks about a great deal in the scripture. Luke just gets kind of a passing glance. Mark has more prevalence in the scripture, and Mark was Jewish too. He was a Jewish. I believe, if I remember right, he had a Gentile father and a Jewish mother. But we're not doing Mark, so I'm not thinking about that right now. But Luke is a Gentile. Okay, it's interesting, and I forgot to shut the sound off on my notification, so hopefully we won't get another one of those. He is the only person assigned authorship in the New Testament that is certainly a Gentile, 100%. Though some believe that he was a Hellenized Jew, meaning a Greek Jew. I don't think that's probably so. Luke's vision, all the four Gospels have a little different vision, even though we have the synoptics and as seen as one. All of them have a little different view. And Luke's view is very much a Gentile view. And that's one of the reasons why they say that it's the most readable for us as Christians. It's not heavy in the Jewish faith at all. There's not, in fact, as we go through here, I honestly can't think of very many places where he's quoting from the Septuagint, which would make sense he was quoting from rather than the Hebrew Bible. But we'll look for those as we go through. It is in Luke, he is writing to the Gentiles. Okay, it is written from a Gentile point of view, and he is, as far as Greek goes, we talk about the best Greek in the New Testament. Luke and Acts is generally regarded as the second best Greek in the New Testament, with ironically Hebrews being considered the best. Okay, which is peculiar because it's written to the Hebrews. That makes one think that whoever, we really speculate and wonder who wrote Hebrews, but it is the best Greek overall. But William Barclay, interestingly enough, maintains that the absolute best Greek in the entirety of the New Testament is the first 4 verses of the Gospel of Luke. And I'm not a Greek scholar, so I can't tell you why. He doesn't elaborate on that. He just says he maintains that these 4 verses are the best. So, as far as writing skill and all of that, so there we have it. We're going to have the little snippet of the best Greek in the New Testament today, because we're just going to look at the first 4 verses only, and mostly I'm giving you today history. And as we go along, I'll try to give you a little bit more history about Luke's gospel, a little more about who Luke might have been, what tradition has held for him. So we won't overload it. We'll try to keep this one a little shorter today if we can. I'm already gone about 9 minutes though, so we better get to the scripture, haven't we? Let's look at Luke chapter 1, first 4 verses only, and this is his introduction. Since many have undertaken to set down an orderly account of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed on to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, I too decided, after investigating everything carefully from the very first, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the truth concerning the things about which you have been instructed. So Theophilus is a new convert, probably, by that. You've been instructed. We've been teaching you about these things, about the Christ, about Jesus, his life, and all of the early things that the disciples did. Now, if this is Luke, and again, I think it is Luke. I think that there's no reason to think they would have attributed it to Luke if it wasn't Luke. I think they'd have picked somebody better, not better, but more prominent. That would have only made more sense if you're going to attribute a letter, if you're writing a letter, and there are letters in the New Testament that are done as such. You'd give it a label. You'd have said, James. We did James. And ironically, I didn't talk much about. We'll talk about the dating tomorrow. How's that? Let me forget. Remind me tomorrow to talk about the date of this. We'll talk about what we have here. If it's Luke, he has in fact been an eyewitness to many of these things, or he has met people that were witnesses. He would have been in Jerusalem with Paul. He was traveling with Paul, going around and seeing these things. He was an eyewitness to what Paul's ministry was, but he would have also met James and Peter and the others, most likely. Most certainly he met James and Peter. It would be hard to believe that he hadn't, given his traveling with Paul. And so he had some great insight, and he talks about that. He's investigated everything. He's gone back and talked to some of the people. Now, I won't talk about the date today, but there still would have, at the time he would have been doing this, there would have been a few people left. Plus the fact that, again, he's remembering back to having been with Paul, remembering back to having met Peter and James. So he has some inside knowledge. And perhaps he's getting up in his age a little bit. And part of his impetus is that I need to get this written down so that it's recorded for posterity. That very well may be. So he's sitting down. He writes a beautiful 2-volume story. Again, Luke is my favorite gospel, largely because of Acts. I look at the author of Luke and Acts, whoever it may be. I think Luke, he's the peacemaker, and I've said that for a long, long time. He's a peacemaker. He's trying to bring these disparate, these deviating thoughts about Jesus. Even Paul and James, as we went through Galatians, talked a lot about that split. Luke's role is a great deal of trying to help to bring that split back together, and to cover, to make peace between these groups. And we need more peacemakers in this world, don't we? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall inherit the earth. We need more popes like Luke. I don't think it would be a bad thing to model our life around Luke, telling the story as he's doing in these 2 volumes, Gospel and the Book of Acts, and trying to bring people together and bring them back to Christ. So that's all I've got for you today, and I'm going to let you go. But tomorrow we'll talk about the date a little bit, and we'll jump into jump right into the birth of John the Baptist, or the being foretold at any rate, and all of that, the lead into the birth of John the Baptist, as the angel appears to his father. So with that, thank you for joining us today. Come back and see us. This will be a long one as we get through Luke and Acts. Hopefully by the time we get done, all this COVID stuff will be a distant memory. This social distancing hopefully will be a distant memory. So with that, I'll let you go. Have a very blessed day, and as always, be a blessing to someone today. Bye-bye.